module, it says, why dialectical behavior therapy? So, a brief description of DBT. DBT was originally developed by Marcia Leinen. I can never get that lady's last name right. But she's super cool because she was a psychologist at the University of Washington. She developed DBT to help people who were diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. However, the treatment has now been adapted for individuals suffering from depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, eating disorders, addictions, and even ADHD. So originally they mostly developed it for PPD and people who had problems with self-harm and suicidal behaviors, but it's so adaptive and the skills are so important just for everyone to learn that they eventually started using it for all of these disorders that originally we really had only CBT as a main therapy for. So it says, while DBT is based in cognitive behavior therapy, Dr. Leinen found that a key to her clients' success was to balance both acceptance and change in their lives. So it was because of this reason that she added mindfulness validation strategies and dialectics to standard CBT, because the goal of DBT is to help people create lives worth living. The treatment can be helpful to anyone interested in making positive and lasting changes. So it goes over this wellness planner, which again we will get to later. So first it goes over mindfulness. So mindfulness is the very heart of dialectical behavior therapy. Sometimes people think that mindfulness may refer to a mysterious spiritual or religious practice. But mindfulness is really just about the way that we pay attention to something on purpose and in the present moment. Within DBT, there is an emphasis on everyday mindfulness, rather than a formal meditative practice that you might be more familiar with. That means that we can be mindful while doing things like eating a piece of chocolate, driving to work, studying for an important exam, talking to a friend, brushing our teeth, or even making our beds in the morning. We can be mindful about anything in our world. So what they're saying here is that to be mindful, you don't have to sit down for 30 minutes or an hour and meditate and pretty much clear all of your thoughts, because as I've been learning, that's not what mindfulness is about. Mindfulness is really just about stopping and realizing what you're doing in the moment. It is very helpful, I found, for anyone that has any issues with dissociation or even just being distracted and maybe not feeling they're in the present moment. I would really recommend mindfulness and, of course, all of these skills. I think it's really good for any of us to have a little DBT skills in our lives. So, going on from there, we can also be mindful about our inner experience. That means that we might pay attention to our thoughts and emotions with a commitment, openness, and curiosity. We are practicing what Buddhism refers to as beginner's mind. When we're practicing mindfulness, it is important that we notice and then make a skillful choice to let go of judgments about ourselves and others, because those judgments may cloud our, let's see, those judgments may cloud our ability to understand things as they truly are. Getting caught up in judgment is definitely not a part of a life worth living, which that whole last paragraph is definitely something I've been working on. I've been trying to work on. Since mindfulness is the core of DBT, we want to strive to practice all of the other skills mindfully too. For instance, you decide to help yourself get through a rough afternoon by using distress tolerance skills. You don't want to be watching a funny cat video while making cupcakes and thinking about the argument that happened earlier in the day. Try to slow things down by focusing on using just one skill at a time. There's lots of important scientific evidence to suggest that regular mindfulness practice may significantly reduce symptoms related to stress and anxiety. Even 2 or 3 minutes of mindful breathing or breath counting can make a big difference in how you're feeling emotionally. In how you're feeling emotionally, period. In my own life, and this is the author speaking, I noticed my mind racing began to slow down to a more reasonable speed once I started to practice mindfulness a little each day. It didn't take me long to see results, and I bet that you might also find that's true for you. So I thought maybe, really quick before I go on, we can practice a bit of mindful breathing and breath counting. So that is something I've been trying to do on a more regular basis, so why not now while we're talking about it. So what you do is you just want to breathe in, hold it for about 5 seconds, and then release. So we're going to breathe in. And then release. Okay, and that's the first one. Number 2, breathe in and release. And when you breathe in, you always want to make sure that you're breathing in through your nose, and that you're using your diaphragm, I think would be the right for your stomach. You may want to Google this because I may be wrong about the parts of the body. But you want to make sure that you're standing up straight, your stomach's pretty much going in, and whenever you let it out, breathe through your mouth and let that air kind of push out of your stomach, if that makes sense. So we're going to do this one more time. So breathe in. And out. Okay. Now back to the back. So now we're going to go over distress tolerance. So all of us have at least some stress woven into our daily lives. Even people who don't have lots of challenges when it comes to coping with their thoughts and emotions must find ways to successfully manage everyday distress. So, dialectical behavioral therapy gives us a lot of different ways to help distract and soothe ourselves when we are face to face with those stressful moments in our lives. Because we're all so different, DBT has given us many ideas to use in tolerating our distress. This is the author speaking. She says, I use distress tolerance skills like activities, thoughts, sensations, meaning, prayer, and radical acceptance every single day. I also love to self-soothe with touches and scents. Using these skills regularly helps me to be the very best that I can be. And she says, I hope if you haven't yet developed your own list of favorite skills, that this planner can be a tool that helps you to understand what is most beneficial to you in life. So, ideally, you'll want to make a list of skills that you can use before you need them. Again, the author speaking, many of my clients find that it's helpful to make a list of things that they can do instead of engaging in self-destructive or self-defeating behaviors. Your own ideas may include things like singing loudly, completing a jigsaw puzzle with more than 50 pieces, taking funny pictures with your cell phone camera and sending them to your friends, practicing yoga poses, changing the sheets on your bed, lighting a candle, writing a poem, mindfully describing a thought or emotion, and even working with things like clay or any other artistic activities. So I really like the one about changing the sheets on your bed, because I think a lot of us that have issues with anything including depression, motivation, focusing, sometimes we can, I don't want to say slack because it sounds like that's us being lazy, and people can describe it that way, but that's not what it is. It's a bit more than that, but I think things like changing your sheets, cleaning up, even just taking a shower mindfully are really amazing ideas, because you're pretty much doing two things at once. You're learning to be mindful, and you're also using it as a way to clean up and take better care of yourselves. And it's easy to maybe forget that a big part of self-care is taking care of our environment and our bodies. So she goes on to say, because we all have to tolerate some stress in our day, making distress-tolerant skills a priority may help you to stay emotionally regulated for longer periods of time. One of the important keys to using distress-tolerant skills is not to use them when we can solve the problem that is causing us to feel discouraged, hopeless, scared, sad, or angry. That may mean that we use other skills to help us solve the problem. Ask for help, talk about what is bothering us, or take other steps to help ourselves. And then she goes on to add, a life worth living isn't a life that's spent engaging in distress tolerance from morning to night. So that's pretty much saying that while it's important to use these skills when needed, we also want to learn other things to self-soothe as we build up our skills, if that makes sense. So we don't want to just live our whole lives thinking, well, what about this skill? Am I going to be okay if I don't do this skill? And as we learn more about DBT, that should get a bit easier and seem more natural. And at the end, she says, as with all things in life, we need balance. So, emotion regulation, a huge skill, and one I think many of us, even if we're not practicing DBT, could use. So, emotion regulation is a set of skills that can help you to manage your emotions, even intense emotions, more effectively. So, one of the first things you'll want to do when you feel like doing something that may make life more difficult is to stop and figure out exactly what emotion you're experiencing at the moment. Is it sadness, fear, disgust, anger, envy, hopelessness, shame, etc.? Simply being aware of what we are feeling can be a great way to help begin to manage the intensity of our emotions. Keeping a list of emotions handy may be helpful if you have a difficult time putting a name to your feelings. So what she means by that is just to write down maybe a list of possible emotions that you may be feeling. And so anytime you have issues with, I guess, maybe putting a word or finding why you're feeling a reason, you will have a list of different emotions or feelings beforehand. I think that's also a very good idea that she has there. So next, you may want to decide if you want to take the action to lower the intensity of a particular emotion. Often it can feel energizing in the moment to keep an emotion going. Some people feel more alive, creative, or powerful when they are experiencing an emotion very strongly. It can almost be an intoxicating experience that may sometimes lead us down the path of making decisions that make our lives even more complicated. It's important to remember that inner emotions do not stay at the same level of intensity for long. An emotion may begin to rise in intensity like a big wave and then slowly come back down. We can help ourselves by deciding that we won't react to a particular emotion until its intensity has dramatically decreased. And this is one that I've really been working on and that I think is a great skill to learn, because obviously when we're feeling worked up, especially us that do have a lot of problems with self-soothing and emotional regulation, we can do things that are very harmful to ourselves and others. So it is very good to stop. Remind yourselves that that emotion will pass eventually. I know it doesn't feel like it will, and I'm speaking from experience. I know sometimes it can feel like, oh, this thing's upsetting me. I have to take care of this or do this thing right now. But it's easier said than done, but believe me, you don't. And I think if you wait a minute and breathe and just wait at least 20, 30 minutes to think about your next action, I think you will be a lot happier in the long run. So, going from there, for example, we may notice that we have an urge to yell when we are feeling angry, but that urge will begin to dissipate. The longer we refrain from acting out on those the longer we refrain from acting out on those emotions. Temporarily walking away from a heated argument or counting to 10 before speaking really can make a difference in expertly riding out a big wave. We can also reduce our vulnerability to experiencing intense emotions by taking care of our physical selves. For you, that may mean eating small balanced meals throughout the day, getting enough sleep, exercising daily, treating illnesses early, mental or physical, of course, and refraining from self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. Another way to help ourselves regulate our emotions is to create situations that make us feel more of the emotions we want to feel like. We want to feel like happiness, joy, hopefulness, love, pride, and playfulness. An important part of our emotional health means taking the time to engage in relaxing and enjoyable activities each day to increase these desired emotions. So, interpersonal effectiveness is one of our last skills, if not the last one. So let's see what she says about interpersonal effectiveness. So dialectical behavior therapy's interpersonal effectiveness skills can help us to get along better with others while also keeping and sometimes enhancing our own self-worth when it comes to our relationships. For instance, sometimes people who are suffering emotionally have a challenging time asking for any kind of help. If this sounds familiar, you might also be in the habit of telling yourself that your close friends and family members should already know what you want or need before you even have to ask. What you may not know is that at times everyone needs a little assistance in asking for the things that will help us build a life worth living. So, what she's saying is just everyone does need help at times, so never feel like you're being a burden, or like you're the only one having issues. It's always better to let your feelings out beforehand than let it boil up, because I know, at least with me, if I don't talk about my feelings with anyone and just let them just kind of like let it stew up inside, the eventual reaction will be a lot worse than if I would have just spoken about it. But I will stop rambling now. So these skills can also help you build healthy relationships in your life. So perhaps your recovery goals include having more friends that you can meet for an occasional movie or coffee, getting along better with your boss so that you're in a good position to finally ask for that raise. I know that's probably a good one for a lot of us. Or maybe you want to be able to talk to that difficult person in your life without always getting into an argument or apologizing over something that may have happened years ago. Also, probably a really good one for a lot of us. Let's see if I can turn this page. So, here's the last page. So if any of these situations sound familiar, the interpersonal effectiveness skills are definitely something you will want to integrate into your daily life. Mastery of this set of skills may also help you to listen more effectively when talking to a friend, be exceptionally brave and tell the truth when it matters the most, show others how much you care, say no when a friend asks you for yet another favor, stand up for your own values and beliefs, ask for help before things become a crisis or emergency, negotiate to create a win-win situation. And at the end she says, I believe that the key to successfully using these skills is to start practicing with the people in your life who don't judge you and who love you just the way you are today. Implementing interpersonal effectiveness skills with emotionally safer people can help you to take a bolder step and use these skills with those in our lives that may be demanding, exasperating, or who may also be suffering. In essence, we are walking mindfully and slowly before we start to run the relational marathon. And I guess just a disclaimer, what she means by practicing it with people is to start integrating it with them, but she doesn't mean to obviously just use them as guinea pigs for the experiment. So experiment. That is all today for the dialectical behavior therapy. This has just been the intro to DBT. I know I've been saying I've been wanting to talk about it for a while, and that's actually one of the main reasons why I wanted to start this channel, is because I love ASMR and I love learning things and therapeutic things, but I noticed not too many people always have combined, I guess, maybe more specific things like DBT with ASMR, and I just kind of, I don't know, I kind of maybe wanted to start doing that if there's anyone else like me who for some reason needs tingles to be interested in things. I don't know, but so I am going to make this a series, hopefully. I'm hoping next time we can maybe look at this journal, fill it out together, see how it works, and we can also work on another little workbook I have, which I'm super excited about that because I've had it for 2 years, and I think I'll be a lot more motivated to really go into it if we're doing it all together. And I know that there were a few things that I said I would, a few video ideas I said I would get to doing in the last video if anyone watched it. I still am interested in doing all of the requests that people asked of me that I told them I would do, and then some of the other ideas I've discussed. I guess have a hard time always implementing things and doing them in a timely manner, so I will get to them. It hasn't happened yet, but we'll get to them. Just don't hold me to the time because it may not happen. So anyways, this has been Cloud Love ASMR. And I will see y'all next time. Have a good night, morning, day,